and gentlemen, this is Watson Michael from Ceylon Institute of English and Leadership. And once again, we are honored to have Mark Crowley back with us, who is a leadership consultant and professional speaker who authored Lead from the Heart Transformational Leadership for the 21st Century, whose mission is to fundamentally change how we lead people in workplaces around the globe. The second edition of his book, which came out in August 2022, was an Amazon #1 release. Furthermore, Mark is a regular columnist for Fast Company magazine and has been published in USA Today, Reuters, Forbes, Stanford Social Innovation Review, the Huffington Post, the Financial Times, CEO Magazine, and others. Mark, welcome back. How are you doing today?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much. I know it's very early where you are in Sri Lanka, like 7 in the morning, and it's a Friday night, late Friday night for me. So we're like in totally different worlds, you know?
Yeah, but see, we get connected, right? Awesome. Great. So these days, like we saw in the recent past, right? Some big tech companies laying off their staff for profit purposes. What are your views on that?
You know, it's shareholders love it
Mm,
when companies lay off people. And so we saw Google lay off 12,000 people in one day. And I
mm,
will say, from my point of view, that
yeah.
whatever reaction positively shareholders gave Google for eliminating 12,000 jobs and all the expenses that come with it,
Hmm.
that Google in one day destroyed a 25-year history of its culture that it will never get back. That's how badly they played this. And I think what's happening here is you're seeing this particularly in technology, that companies are normalizing layoffs as a means of cost cutting, driving up their share price, and appeasing shareholders. And I think it's patently wrong. And the reason that I think it's patently wrong is because there are other ways of finding cost saves. Like start with stop hiring anybody and allow
Mm,
attrition to lower costs. There was no effort to do that. It's just let's let 12,000 people go. We're eliminating millions of dollars. Wall Street's going to applaud us. And what they don't
mm,
understand, I'm a humanist. And I
yeah.
believe that our hearts actually have a big role in influencing our choices and our
Mm,
behavior. If I'm one of the people who stayed in that company, in other words, I wasn't a
yeah.
12,000 part of that group being laid off,
Yeah.
I'm now
Yeah.
looking at my leadership and thinking, hey, if anything goes wrong, I could be next.
Mm,
So once you put somebody into that fear, they're no longer able to perform optimally because they're always looking to think, am I going to get laid off?
yeah.
Am I going to lose my job if I
Yeah.
go here? And that doesn't help people. So I think what we're doing is in business is that we're just saying it's okay to let a whole lot of people go because it's so
Mm,
efficient. It saves us
yeah.
money and it'll drive the stock price up when at the
Yeah.
same time it's undermining human well-being. And when you do that, you're harming society,
Yeah.
but you're also harming your own business.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, when you said, I mean, 25 after 25 years, like, it was like the history of the company, they did that, like, I'm pretty shocked, right? So just imagine the people, like, who are having a good job and everything, and all of a sudden they have been let go for profit purposes. I mean, especially with the inflation, it's pretty hard. Some
You know,
people.
they also did it. So start off with the idea of just letting 12,000 people go. This wasn't a company that
Mm,
was going down. This wasn't a company
yeah.
that was to fail. This was a company that thought that it needed to eliminate jobs in order to save money. So
Mm,
there. But what they did was, Watson, I don't know if you know this or not, but what they did
mm,
was they emailed people and told them that they'd lost their jobs. And on
wow.
top of that, they eliminated their technology. So what that meant was, let's say you and I were teammates. You and I were friends, right? We're all on the same team. So I get
Mm,
laid off. I want to send you a message and I want to say, hey, Watson, I just want to let you know it's been great working with you and I hope we can stay in
mm,
touch. Here's my personal
yeah.
email. Well, they shut it all down. And I don't know what your personal email is, and I don't know it for all the other hundreds of people that I want to say goodbye to. So I
Mm,
am leaving the company that I've contributed to, that I've done good work for, and I'm not able to say goodbye to the people who work for me, the people
yeah.
that I work with. This is just outrageous, outrageous. Now they've come back and said, well, we did it wrong, but they keep laying people off. And I just
Mm,
think it's one of the most harmful things that a company can do is a layoff.
absolutely. Very true. Very true. Yeah. So, can you talk about a preferred chapter in your book?
A preferred chapter. I
Yeah.
would say so. The history, is interesting because when I began writing the book, the first time I wrote it, so you mentioned in the introduction that I wrote a second edition, but when I wrote it the first time, uh, I can't say that I wanted to write it as, are you familiar with the term bucket list? Like things you
Mm,
want to do before you die,
yeah.
before you kick the
Yeah.
bucket. And I think in some respects, I wasn't really certain that it was going to be an important book, but I wanted to
Yeah.
be able to accomplish writing a book. And the
Yeah.
first chapter that I ended up writing was what became the fourth chapter. It's about the heart science, the science that shows that we're not rational beings actually at all, that we're emotional beings, and that feelings and emotions drive up to 95% of our behavior, and that the heart
Yeah.
and mind are connected, and the heart is
Yeah.
sending more information to the brain. And the implications of this is
Mm,
huge. If we think people are rational, we're going to say, do this because this. If you do this, our scores are going to go higher, or you do this and our customers are going to be happier by 30% or whatever. But that's not how people respond. They respond to how they feel. So
mm,
when I started writing that chapter, Watson, I realized, oh, this isn't like something that I'm just doing to say that I wrote a book. I actually have something really meaningful to say,
mm,
and it changed my life. Like here we are talking, you know. So
yeah.
I discovered something through. I mean, honestly, I've been managing this way for my entire life, but
Yeah.
when the science validated why people respond to being cared for, being valued, being supported, being appreciated, being developed,
Yeah.
that it intrinsically motivates us to do our best work. Nobody was saying that 12, 13 years ago when my book came out first. People, not only
Mm,
that, were saying that's not true. And so I was really on the cutting edge. And when I realized that, I thought,
mm,
wow, like this is what I was put here to do. Like this is my
yeah.
purpose. So that's the chapter that I would say is the most special to me.
Wow. Okay. So, you have a lot of experience, right, Mark? From corporate to your own leadership consulting. So, what was the most challenging thing you ever faced, and how did you overcome it?
Well, this is something that is true for every leader, I suspect.
Yeah.
And that is that you're going to end up managing somebody who doesn't agree with you at all. Like
Mm, mm,
doesn't like what you're doing, doesn't trust you, doesn't like you, whatever. And that's a very difficult situation, particularly when they work for you.
yeah.
To have somebody who's rowing the boat in the opposite direction when you're trying to go forward and they're trying to push you back, that's like
Mm,
stressful. And because you don't want to be in that situation, and sometimes you wonder, like, what did I do to create that? And
yeah.
it goes back to what we were just talking about. People aren't
Mm,
rational, so sometimes they won't like you because you remind them of somebody else. Or
mm,
that sounds crazy, but that's actually
yeah.
happened to me. Where people are responding because you reminded them of someone that they didn't trust or didn't like, but you have to figure it out. what's going on inside of someone that would make them
Yeah.
be motivated to work against you. And what I discovered is that that's the moment when you absolutely have to trust yourself. Like you have to
Mm.
say to yourself, I'm going to keep doing what I do because ultimately they will come to trust me when they see the consistency and they see that I actually, no pun intended, have my heart in the right place. Like I'm doing it for the right reasons. And so I had
Yeah.
this experience several times where I inherited people came to work for me that I either didn't pick or didn't know, and they were leery of me. And I just thought, rather than retaliate because they're making my life miserable or making my life difficult, I'm just going to be me, lead the way I lead, and have them come to the conclusion that I'm a good leader and that I'm someone they can trust. But it takes a lot of courage to do that because when somebody is taking swipes at you and criticizing you openly to everybody else, you want to
Yeah.
shut them down. But I found that the easier way is to not respond to it. Don't take the bait.
Mm. Yeah. Sometimes like we need to control what we speak, and we should not react immediately because
Exactly.
yeah,
Trust yourself. Mhm.
absolutely. Yeah. So, what is one advice you would give to your younger self?
That's easy. Part of it has to do with my upbringing. So I
Mm.
won't go into the details of this, but my mom died when I was very young, and my father was very
Okay.
abusive, not physically abusive, but here, psychologically,
Yeah.
emotionally. And so
Mm.
he kind of beat me down and had me not believing in myself. And I spent a lot of time, I've been very successful, but I've always had this sort of self doubt.
Mm.
And doubt has helped me in some respects because it made me work harder and learn more. But I think it's unhealthy to doubt yourself. I think
Mm.
we're, from a leadership standpoint, from a life standpoint, I think we're meant to believe in ourselves and
Yeah.
to be true to ourselves and
Yeah.
to not doubt. And I think the answer to your question is don't criticize yourself. Like, why would you
Mm.
ever, why would you be hard on yourself? Why would you ever do
Mm.
that? And I did that for a very long time. Like I was my own, that doesn't very good, and
Yeah.
you could have done better there, and people don't like you, and all the voices that go on
Yeah.
here, and had
Yeah.
to tame all of that to get to a point where, I realized like I'm powerful and I'm good and I'm
Yeah.
talented, and I'm
Yeah.
going to use that talent for good, as opposed
Mm.
to, do you think I'm talented? Do you think I'm good?
Yeah.
Believe in yourself. That's the answer.
Very true. Because like sometimes people bring you down. Negativity is something that will never go away. Because I remember UFC President Dana White, UFC, the MMA company President Dana White is telling when he started the company, there was so much negativity, right? So much. They said, you can't do this, you can't do that. And then he was telling in a interview, he was doing an interview, and on the interview it was with Tony Robbins, if I'm not mistaken. And the interviewer was telling negativity increases when you become more successful. So I was like, okay, right. I was listening to that. So I mean, it's like sometimes some people will put you down because maybe they don't like themselves and they don't like to see other people making progress because they know they can't do that. So, but
Yeah, that's
no one
different
should.
though. That's different.
Mm,
I wasn't critical of other people and I wasn't jealous of other people. I was just hard on myself
mm,
and and didn't use my full power because I was afraid, like I'm
yeah.
make a mistake or I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy. And the reason I mention this is because A, I've transcended it, but B,
Yeah.
I think universally people struggle with value and worth. Am I worth
Mm,
anything? Am I valuable? Like, who am I? Why do I have a voice? Why should I get to say
yeah.
anything? Who am I to be CEO? And it's like, Marianne Williamson said, who are you not to be? Why would you
Mm,
why would you limit yourself? Why would you say I'm not worthy of that when somebody else is? Like, if it's a
Mm.
possibility for somebody, it's a possibility for you. And that was a very
Yeah,
hard lesson for me to learn. But I don't criticize myself anymore. I'm very compassionate with myself, and it's a very enlightened way to be.
absolutely. That's something which many people can learn from you. Great. So, and Mark, to the final message is like, these days with the inflation going and people, okay, we'll bring the word people facing negativity and they're worried about rejection and they need to learn to like themselves also, right? So, what is your piece of advice you can give in terms of motivation to push forward?
Um, it's interesting because pushing forward is really the advice. Like,
Mm,
interestingly, it's don't let an internal voice tell you not to do something that in your
yeah,
heart you know you're supposed to do, right?
yeah.
So, an example, right? So, I'm beginning to write my book. This is now
Mm,
13 years ago. And because of how I was raised and because of the voice that my father put
mm,
in, which was that I wasn't worthy, I
yeah.
couldn't be a writer, you're never going to amount to anything, all those kinds of things. So here I am hearing these things. And the voice is trying to tell me, don't do this. Like, you're not good enough. You're not smart enough. People will never read it. No one's going to be interested in what you have to
Mm,
say.
mm,
Bad, 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 right?
yeah,
All this voice. But what I decided to do was like, am I supposed to write this book? Like, do I have something to say? And is this going to be
yeah,
meaningful? And it was like, yes. So it was like clawing through quicksand until I got to a point where I was like, I made a big distance. Like, I can actually get
yeah,
there. Right.
yeah.
So I didn't listen to it and say, I'm not going to do this. I kept going at a slow pace until I got where I wanted to go.
Mm, mm,
That's the advice. One step at a time. Just keep
yeah,
going, no matter what voices, what doubt you have, what fears you have.
yeah.
Keep going, because you know what? You're going to get to the end and you're going to go, "What was I afraid of? What was I
Mm,
concerned? What was all that about?" Because look, I got a book and I did it, and I think that's what holds people back is that they think, "Oh, I'm not good enough. I might as well not even bother." And
yeah,
that's the mistake.
absolutely. Wise words. So, Mark, thank you very much for taking time and doing this podcast with us.
Oh, it's always a delight to be with you, Watson. So thank you for inviting me. I'm sorry, it's Saturday morning, right? For you, it's 7
That's
o'clock in the
fine.
morning.
That's fine. That's
Wow.
fine.
So I appreciate you're doing this very, very much. You're a wonderful person. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Always an honor.